What's up, Internet? You're tuned in episode 33 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Peter Messi, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back.
It's good to be back. It's like like yesterday I spoke to you about video games.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to talking about it some more.
Just yesterday, or maybe even just moments ago when we finished recording a different podcast. Eagle-eyed YouTube viewers will notice we are wearing the same clothes and we are tired.
Yeah, so this episode's being recorded a little bit earlier because Chewy's coming to visit you and you've got some shows on, so the schedule's a little bit crazy. So if any breaking news has happened, this was recorded last Tuesday.
Yeah, sorry.
So this is more of an evergreen episode.
Yeah, so we'll have to, if something insane, Xbox has bought EA, we'll have to talk about that next week. Apologies. Hope you understand. But we do have a good episode planned for you here. We're going to be talking all about gamer problems. We got a good question from one of our Patreon producers, Mr. Asobi, who wrote in and had a great question for us that sparked a main topic about what do you think are problems and things that only gamers have to know about. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of March. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support. Speaking of which, there's a bunch of ways that you can show your support for the show. Head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to our Twitch channel, to our Patreon, to our P.O. Box. If you want to write in and be part of the show, you can hit us up at questions@flipscreen.games. Hit us up on the Discord. Find links to all that stuff over on flipscreen.games. Again, that's flipscreen.games, our website. Go give us a follow. Check us out. Come be a part of the community, however you choose to be. We are thankful that you chose to be here. So, let's jump in to this week's talking point. Again, as I said, this one comes from one of our Patreon producers, Mr. Asobi, who wrote in and said, question for the week. What do you think are problems and things that only gamers have to know about? For example, buying something and having to wait for the day one update to download and install before being able to start. Not wanting to start a new game because you don't want to do an hour of tutorials / cutscenes right now and just want to play something properly / familiar. Or having too little storage for all your games, so you have to think about what games to keep installed. I thought this was a good question, and it was your idea to bring it and make it the main topic this week. And I think it's an interesting one because we talk about this a lot, right? Like if you're like us, right? And when I say us, all of us, right? Whether it's me and Steve here doing a show about video games, or you, the listener, coming and tuning in and listening to somebody talk about video games for 2 hours every week or whatever it is. We are not normal, right? Like even among gamers, we are the hardest of the hardcore, right? The folks that have our kind of appetites and tastes. So there's a lot of very unique, I think, gamer experiences that even folks who play a decent amount of video games probably don't have to think about very often, right? Like the storage thing, that's the we talk about, right? The big budget gamer, right? The not the big budget. I'm sorry, like the
they've got Fortnite installed, or they've got FIFA installed.
Yeah, and they maybe pick up one or two games a year, and it's like every year you just cycle the games out, right? Like it's easy, right? It's no brainer. You're not worrying about finding a 2 terabyte expansion for your Switch.
Yeah, like Chewy went through the whole process of buying an SD card, and you can't transfer the games from one SD card to the other. So it was, okay, I'll lose all my screenshots, so I'll take all of those off, put them onto my computer so I don't lose any of my screenshots and videos, because you don't want to lose those memories of when you first beat Breath of the Wild. It's got to stay there, otherwise you'll never remember that same moment again if you play the game. And then had to re-download all of the games, like all of them, It's just wild to me that that's a thing that people go through and put themselves through. But there's so many. Like when I was thinking about this, it's just like something that happened on stream, right? This week when you were streaming and we were trying to figure out which button it was. It was like press Y and press X and hold this button. It's just like no, whichever button's Y. Oh, the one that's triangle? Yeah, press the one that would be triangle and press R1. And it's just like there's no standard across all of them. It's like, is A in this position or is A in this position? Is X, does X mean X or does it mean like the cross button? Yeah, it's just like, come on. It's so frustrating and so annoying that I go from like playing an Xbox game. I'll play Elden Ring for like hours and hours and hours, and I'll go back to my Switch because I was playing Mario Kart because the Mario Kart courses came out, and I was clicking B. I was like, why the fuck is it? Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong console. That's why it's not doing it. Okay, it's not working. Like A is in the wrong position. It's over here, so I have to learn to click the right button. But that's something everyone's had to do, right? And you think about it. This is a whole like control system that we just know. It's like, oh, that's R1. It's okay. But like if someone's just picking up a controller for the first time, they won't know where R1 is. They're not going to have any clue.
Which one?
You know, if I say triangle, it's the button at the top. If I say circle, it's the button on the right. You just know instantly because you've been playing forever. Right, you know where the buttons are. But a normal person would have no idea. That's just something that's ingrained in you because you're a gamer and you've played those consoles.
Well, and it's funny too because you say the thing about like the different buttons and everything. Like that never fucks me up. Right? Like never.
Really?
Yeah.
When I go from the Pro controller to the Xbox controller because they're so similar.
Yeah.
Like when I go from like the handheld Switch to the Xbox controller, it's fine because they're different. It feels different, but in my hands it feels so similar that I'm like, oh, I've just touched the same controller.
I don't know.
But it's not.
I think it might be because of the fact that Xbox and PlayStation have done a really good job of mapping them to colors. Even if I'm not playing...
Well, PlayStation did, but not anymore. Like all of their new games didn't have a color. The controller doesn't have any colors on it.
That's true. Yeah, they're just like black and white. But I mean, I don't know. Like I never like with PlayStation. I think it's different because they're so unique. Like right, the circle. I mean, X is the same, but I don't think of it as that. Right, like. You just know. But like with the like you said, the Xbox, they're both ABXY, but they're all in different positions, right? On the Xbox,
but then that
A is bottom, B is to the right,
and X and Y is
shifted as well. But it doesn't mess me up ever for whatever reason. Like even if I go from this right to an Xbox controller, like
what do you call the buttons on top? Because I bet you don't call it RZ and LZ. I bet you've never once called that RZ and LZ.
So
ZR and ZL. No one calls it that.
I generally say R1 and L1, R1.
R2.
Yeah, and L2, R2 because of PlayStation. But with the Xbox, I do say the bumpers.
Bumper and trigger.
I'll say bumpers and triggers because they feel different. But like if somebody says, oh, it's L1 or R1, I'm like, yeah, I know what
you'll know where it is. Yeah, you'll know what it is.
You don't even think about it. But with this, I
on stream,
never
it was
think
a
of
serious
these as
problem.
ZR and LR in for you guys, Z, right? It's like, no fucking way. I'm not thinking of that. Like, come on. Like, that's ridiculous.
And yeah, they were like the first one to have that Z button.
So Z button. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I do remember that.
There first. And they're the ones that did the A, B, X, Y. And I've had this whole conversation with people where I'm just like, Nintendo needs to be the one to change. They're the holdout at this point. A is moving to the bottom. Even this generation, PlayStation 5 has shifted. Circle's not confirmed in Japan anymore. X is confirmed. They've swapped them round. Just move the position of the buttons. People will come to learn and accept it. But people cannot, those people's minds, people that are just like dead Nintendo, those buttons are always going to have to stay in that position.
I never really thought about that. You're right, though. That is weird.
Yeah. They're the one,
but I don't think about it
now.
You know what, though? In some games I do, though, because I have done that in platformers. Where on Nintendo, sometimes I switch A and B.
Yeah, for like the jump and stuff. Yeah, people do that. But if you play Dark Souls on a Nintendo console, B is confirmed. They've kept them in the same position
Okay.
as any Dark Souls game. So like what Y does on Xbox, like to hold down Y to
Yeah.
bring up the menu, it's hold down X. They've kept
Interesting.
them all
Okay.
in the same position, regardless of what the button does and
That
what the
makes
button
sense.
means. But it means the confirm and reject, like A and B, are backwards, and it just feels wonky and wrong on a Nintendo console.
Yeah, Nintendo switched it up so many times. Like, just switch where they are,
do it,
right? Because like on the
Yeah.
GameCube controller, the A is the main button.
Yeah, it's like an orbital system.
Yeah.
It's like A. But that was the thing. Back then, they used to put the controls on the screen. Nintendo would always have the like button in the top left of what it did. And the GameCube was great because they all felt different. You could just feel which button it was.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's the small red one.
And I like, you said like the orbital thing. Like I liked having like you have it center and then you're kind of like gliding from second to second. This is a thing. This is a thing. We just identified one, by the way. Like not just like the having to know a weird control scheme, but the fact that we have weird preferences and we're like, yes.
Oh, yeah, really weird preferences, yeah.
It's just like just random shit like that where it's like, yeah, like you know what I really like though is the feeling of this very antiquated controller from 2004. That's some deep ass gamer.
Yeah, and I can only play Smash Brothers with this one.
Yeah, I really can. I'm that asshole. Like when I remember when Smash Ultimate came out, I booted it up, and I grabbed my Pro Controller because that's how I play every game, right? And I didn't even think about it. And I was playing, and I was like, "This feels weird. Like, what's up? Like, I feel like I keep pressing the wrong buttons." Then I was like, "Oh, right!" And I went and plugged in my GameCube controller, and I was like, there we go.
No, it feels like home.
Yeah. Which is insane. That's an insane thing.
Which is really insane considering Smash didn't originate on that console, and yet that's the controller that everyone.
It's because of Melee. It's because Melee was when it like created the competitive scene, and like that those folks are die hard,
Yeah, it's weird. And the other thing when it comes to controllers, before we move on to something else, is the way people hold them, right? Because this was a whole thing that I didn't realize, that people hold controllers in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I always rest my index fingers on the triggers, and on an Xbox controller, there's like a ridge. Yep. Right in between the two, and it's got like a nice texture, and your fingers are meant to sit there. People hold it with the middle finger.
My buddy does
on
that.
The triggers.
He does. He
and
holds
I'm like,
them.
Why are you doing that? That feels so wrong.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I remember he switched to playing that way. He like adopted it, and he's like, "Well, I can be more efficient with these buttons if I have fingers on them all the time." And I was like, "That's fucking insane!" Like. And I tried to do it, and I was like, "No, I can't do it." Yeah,
it's easier on a PlayStation controller, but even still, once PlayStation, I could see it on a PS1 or a PS2. Yeah, but like on a PS1, PS2, they're just buttons. I could see it working on that. On a PlayStation 4, or PlayStation 5, or one of them's a trigger, it just feels so wrong.
Yeah,
I could be so quick going between the two that there's no need for me to have both fingers up there.
Yeah. Do you ever do like weird control stuff like in specific games? Like I remember.
Oh yeah. Like I'll play Animal Crossing, like this. Like I'll hold the controller like that when I'm just walking around. It's really strange. Just like I'm just chilling out, so I'll just like hold the controller in one hand and just move.
That's really weird. That is really weird. Okay, that's a weird one. I'm more thinking like something I'll find myself doing. This is something that I remember a good friend of mine, Jack, sent me a picture of himself where he was doing this weird crab claw holding thing for Dark Souls. And I was like, that's not right. Like if the game makes you do that, that's not good. That's wrong. That's just.
Have you ever felt that you needed to do that when you've been playing Elden Ring? I've not once felt like,
I do.
Need this. Like,
no, I definitely do. And it's not just Elden Ring; it's other action games too. Sometimes, like I do that every once in a while in a game like Horizon or Ghost. If I'm like running and I want to cycle through, like I'm running right now, right?
Oh yeah,
and I move this finger over and cycle with the thumb.
Yeah.
And then
I'm the opposite. I'll use my right hand because usually I'll use my left finger to do the D-pad.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll pull my right hand like over and like press this while I'm still moving because I need to move because I've just rolled.
I've done
like
that
in Elden
before.
Ring, I've
Yeah,
just
that makes
rolled,
sense.
and I'm like, quick, get this hand over so I can still move.
But
There's a lot of stuff that you can do. You have to be quite dexterous, I think, sometimes.
When we were streaming Elden Ring, there was a point where I was running from somebody and I was controlling my left stick with my pointer finger like this, like rotating it, and I was cycling to get my flask open or something, or like pull up the horse or something like that, right? Because that's like that takes like 3 buttons, but I'm also trying to run and dodge, so I'm like, okay, like run, dodge, pull this up, press right, then I'm back on, switch back to normal hands, and like, you know.
Oh man, okay, yeah, maybe we need to change the way your horse is in certain positions, because if that's how you happen to play, that's crazy to me. Like, that's just insane.
I feel like I should put it somewhere else. But yeah, I don't know, it's funny, but yeah, that's definitely like a wacky thing for sure.
Another couple I thought of, well, so like it's sort of triggered from Asobi's one, like the day one patch and stuff, was waiting up to midnight and then finding out the game doesn't come out then. Like, it's a weird time zone thing, right? We've all done it. I think the Mario Kart thing was meant to come out at a specific time, and everyone was convinced the Mario Kart 8 DLC was coming out at like 7 p.m. Pacific or something. And it just didn't happen. It didn't come. It just came at some other random arbitrary time that was on that day. But everyone's done it. It's just like, oh no, it's like 8 a.m. in your time zone because we're doing it based on like Sydney time or something, and you're just like dead inside and like crying because you've waited up all this time and it's not happened. And then the other thing is when it says ready to start and you start the game and you're like really excited that the game's going to work, and it just shows you another install screen, but it's one within the game rather than
like it takes you to the main menu, but you can't start it. Like, it's like, why would you?
And it's like 70% done or whatever. It's just like, it says ready to start. So I click the game. I'm like really excited. I can go straight in, and it's just like, no, it's not ready to start at all.
Tease.
Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
That's a bad one. One that I thought of that I thought was funny is taking time off of work to play a game. Because, like, no
Especially when it's like an online game as well. Like, the servers are down and you're just like, what the hell?
Oh, I didn't even think of it that way, but that's a good point. But I mean, like, the fact that like so many people will be like, oh yeah, like this new game's coming out that I've been waiting for, right? Like, you know, The Witcher 3's coming out, Skyrim's coming out, right? Oh, I love that franchise. I'm gonna take a day off of work, or I'm taking a 4-day weekend so I can stay home and play this game, right? Like, I can't think of another medium where that's like a normal thing that fans do, where you're like, I'm taking the day off of work to go see this movie. I'm gonna read.
People did it for books.
I guess
certain books, people would do it for like a big book launch. I remember, but yeah, it's not usual. Like, I've taken a week off work before because I've been excited for a game that, and like, oh my god, when people book weeks off and then the like launch date shifts as well. Can you imagine that? I bet that happens to people.
That happened to a friend of mine when I was a teacher. Her now ex-husband had done that, I think, for Hitman 2, and then it got delayed, and it came out like way later, and he's like, oh man, like, fuck. Now I don't have time off to take for it when it happens, you know, like, shit. But, you know,
that's the worst. Yeah,
c'est la vie, I guess.
That's like one of the worst things, though, that you get so excited, you amp yourself up for it, and I'm a big proponent that if the game's not ready, don't put it out. But
of course,
it is so disappointing. And another crazy thing we all do is we all tune in to an event that's just watching TV adverts, and like that's literally all it is, right? They're just commercials that we're watching. We're like all tuning in at the same time. We're all excited. We're talking about the fact that, is this game going to be revealed? Are we going to see this here? And they're just literally adverts to sell you things.
Yeah.
But I'm still so excited about it, and I'm still like, oh my god, it's the next Zelda game. And it's just like,
you know,
you want another $60 from me. That's all you're showing me this advert for.
I think that is less weird, though, because like that's also like that happens with movies, right? Like a new trailer
Yeah,
drops.
and your Super Bowl happens as well. Like that's a big thing. It's like people come to
watch
see the
commercials,
adverts, which I
sure.
think is so strange. That's like the most capitalist thing in the world.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I think it's more just like if you're at a Super Bowl party and you don't like football, you're like, oh, cool.
Oh, it's like these are great. Yeah,
breaking it up.
these.
Yeah. Breaking up the game. That's great. But yeah, I mean, you see that in other like fandom places, right? Like movies, comics, all those kinds of things. Like they get trailers, they get hype, but nobody does it like games, right? Nobody does it like video games. Video games, we love to get hype over here. That's for sure. Although I don't know, they're getting less hype nowadays. I'll tell you what, like not the announcements, but like we're not filling rooms with hundreds of people and having like fireworks shows and stuff to be like, yeah, here's the next Call of Duty. You know, like we're not doing that stuff anymore.
What are you wanting? Do you really want to see Microsoft bring another car out on stage? Is that what you need? Because that's all we got for like the last 5 E3s was just, here's the new car that's going to be in the next Forza. It's just like, no one cares about that.
Here's an interview with Pele. Let's talk about FIFA.
Right? It was just like, oh my god, no one cares about this. We're here to see the games. We don't care about the other stuff around it. It's all so strange.
I think my thing is though, part of me does miss it now that it's gone, but also it's not totally gone because Jeff's still putting that shit in his shows, but now it's just virtual. So it's just like,
oh yeah, or it's music. Like his is a lot of music for bands you don't like.
But even if I like the band. Right, like I don't care. That's not what I'm here for, right? Like like I forget what one it was. Like they had Green Day play it, and I'm like, I like Green Day. Like they were one of my favorite bands from when I was a kid and everything. And it's like I like them fine. They're great, but like I don't want to fucking see them play at a video game event. I want to. If I'm gonna watch them play, I'll go watch them play at a concert. It's not useful, right? Like I don't know. It's like this is not like the Super Bowl halftime show, right? This is a video game conference. Like I don't need to see live music, you know? Unless I don't mind when they have the live orchestra and it's like, oh, it's game of the year, like we're going to do the big, they do the medley of like all the music from the
I do like
that's
those.
cool.
I do, yeah.
That's cool. Cuz that feels like an event show. It's like, all right, yeah. Like that's a neat thing. But like I don't feel like we need that crap. But hey, here's a thing. Not only watching and getting excited about commercials, but then being like, how good were the commercials?
Yeah, like rating them. But we do that, There's a weird thing that we do. Oh god.
And we're like another
problem that I know that we have both had, and I still have to this day. It's like, oh, it's a new game. Am I gonna like it? Do I buy the collector's edition? And then you don't, and you end up falling in love with that game, and you didn't get the collector's edition, and now it's sold out.
And then you have an eBay alert on Aloy Horizon Zero Dawn statue 5 years later, and you're
where's
like,
that statue? I need it. Oh god, it's honestly, it's happened way more times than I would like to admit. That you go and you're just like, oh god. Man, the trailers look good, but like, what if it's, what if it doesn't click with me, and then I've spent like $80 to $100 on this thing, and I won't really like it. No one's gonna want to buy it if the game turns out to be crap. Can you imagine if you bought like the collector's edition of Cyberpunk or that Cyberpunk console?
You'd be
like,
fine.
No one cares about
You'd be
that.
fine. There's still fucking people who are like, no, this game is the best game ever, and if you don't like it, you're wrong. So you could sell it to one of those people. That'd be fine. You'd be all right.
They'll have already bought it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem.
No, it's more. It's
got it a pre-launch.
It's more like games that get collector's editions that have like no business having a collector's edition. Like I remember THQ Nordic, they re-released Destroy All Humans, which is a game I loved. It's like a really weird niche cult game on the Xbox. It might have been on the other consoles as well, but I played it on Xbox. And you play as like an alien in like in 1950s America, and you're like abducting people and blowing stuff up. It's goofy fun. I'm sure parts of it have aged very poorly, both in design and humor. But fun enough game, right? And they did a re-release of it, and they had like a $500 collector's edition, and I was
Don't
like,
need that.
nobody wants that. And I remember seeing it on sale like for like $50, and I was like, that's yikes.
Maybe I go for it then.
But even then, I thought about it, but I was like, I don't even want any of this shit. Like, you know, it was like they had like an alien backpack. I was like, what are you doing? Sell a statue.
Why?
That's the only thing anybody wants in a collector's edition.
Oh, see, sometimes I want a statue. Like
art book.
I really wanted yeah, art book's always good. Soundtrack's always good. I wanted the Breath of the Wild soundtrack that came with like that.
A steelbook is
came with, like that glass orb.
Steelbook's good.
Steelbook's a solid one.
I like a map, you know, something like that, a poster.
Yeah.
Like those are all cool. But like when you get to like the weird tchotchke shit, it's like, dude, I don't know. You know, I don't know. Do I need like a stuffed animal backpack that I can wear?
That reminds me,
to conventions and nowhere else. Go ahead.
You mentioned the Steelbook, right? And that reminded me of the Horizon Collector's Edition. Buying a copy of a game and thinking it comes with a disc, and then you get it, it's just a code.
If you thought that came with a disc, that's on you, though.
I don't think so, because it comes with the Steelbook. Why would you want the Steelbook?
That's
if it
fair.
Doesn't come with it.
That's fair.
It's like
You're
what?
right.
It's so weird.
It's like if you
and there's slots for the 2 discs in there for the other version that they sell with the disc. It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre that they even bother giving you the Steelbook. Like, just give me the statue and a code. Like,
some people want the Steelbook though. You know,
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know why.
It does feel weird to just not
would care about it that much. It's like not have a disc in there, nothing in there. It's so strange.
Well, because I think the thing is, if you put the disc in there, you got to make it cost $70 more.
Do you? Like, you're already getting the $70 digital edition. Like, why does it cost you any more? Like, you get the code for the game.
I guess that's true.
They don't charge any more.
Yeah. You're right. One. You're right. I mean, it would cost them more to put the disc in there, but
it would. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's them cheaping out on like a 10-cent disc or whatever.
Yeah.
But that also makes me think about the fact that this is the only medium, I guess, like really in history since the form of consumable media where you can't just play it on the next thing or continue to play it, right? Like your computer might get up there and you can't play the game. Or you're like, get another console. I can't play the previous games unless I keep that aging hardware around that's no longer going to play. Like most movies that were on VHS came to DVD, and then they were on DVD and they came to Blu-ray, but I could continue to play them. Like I can put those DVDs in my Blu-ray player and it just works.
Right.
I can put those Blu-rays in my 4K Blu-ray player and it works, but I can't put my PS1 games or my PS2 games in my PS5 or my PS3 games in my PS5. They just don't work.
Yeah, and I think like even like not even thinking about backwards compatible media, because I understand that there is like a difference to that, and like, you know, not to say that the PS5 couldn't do that, but it's probably cost.
I'm not even saying it's like there's a reason it shouldn't happen, right? I'm just saying this is a problem that only gamers are presented.
Yeah,
with.
but
like,
I think
a real movie buff, like you're not thinking about like, can I play this DVD? Is it compatible with the specific DVD player that I've just bought? It's just like, no, it's a DVD. Just put it in and it'll play.
But I think even beyond that, right? As we move into a less physical media oriented future, I think your point makes even more sense, because the fact that like as a gamer, if you want to play a classic game, that the only option for you to do so is to have and maintain the original hardware and disc or cartridge or whatever, and a lot of those things, guess what? They have rot and fail and rates, and you might still have to buy a weird
lasers fail.
Yeah, and even if you do that, right, you might still need to buy a modern piece of technology that is the guts of those old things to actually play your shit, because guess what? Otherwise you need an adapter because your TV doesn't have plugs to support it anymore, and or your TV's too fucking big and it doesn't, you know, like all these other things, like, or right, and then the only other way to get it, if there isn't a modern release that isn't dog shit or overpriced or inaccessible for any other reason, is to be a criminal.
Yeah, because that's something that we've made a crime.
Like, that's insane, right? Like, that's not, you know, and I mean, like, that does happen to some degree, right? Like, but I feel like it gets less and less common. Like, there used to be like, oh, you know, Disney would put their movies in the Disney vault, and if you didn't buy one, you couldn't have gotten it at that point, and then you'd only be able to get a secondhand copy. And like, that's a problem in comics where there'll be like books that haven't been reprinted in a long time, and things like that. It happens, but like a fraction of the time, right? And there's usually a way for you to get a digital version, right? Because pretty much every movie ever made is available for sale on Amazon Prime now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, pretty
and if
much.
It's not, it's on Disney Plus, and if it's not on Disney Plus, it's on Netflix. Like, there is really a way for you to watch any film that you would realistically ever want to watch. Same for TV. And if it's not available digitally, there'll be a physical box set or something that you could buy of it. Like, there'll be a way for you to watch it.
Yeah, and
it's kind of crazy that same thing doesn't happen for video games. Like, we talk about the Nintendo, for example, they've got the biggest back catalog of any company, and yet you still can't play most of the games on their latest console.
Because
they
like,
had such a good thing going with the virtual console, and it's just like, Game Boy games? No, we're killing the Wii U and the 3DS eShop. You won't be able to play them there either. Ha ha ha.
And it's stuff like where it's like some of the best, most celebrated games of all time, right? Like, there is not a way to play them on remotely recent hardware, right? You know, and like, that's insane. That's insane. Nobody else has to deal with that bullshit.
Yeah, that sucks. Before I get into like my final one, there's one more I wanted to talk about, which I guess isn't just necessarily related to gamers, but I think it happens a lot more to people I know, and maybe that's just because I know lots of gamers, which is like FOMO and getting sucked into the hype of something, whether that's just the hype of everyone talking about the game because they're like all talking about how great the game is and you want to play it, even though you know you won't be into the game, or you've believed the marketing behind a game and you've got sucked right into it to the point where you haven't waited for reviews, you've bought the game, and it turns out to be a piece of crap, right? And that has happened. That's happened to both of us.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that is a thing that is. I'm sure that happens with movies all the time, right? Like, people.
Oh, it must happen with movies all the time. Yeah,
but I don't think it's
I
the
feel
same.
Like there's less of a barrier for entry.
Yeah,
because I'm just about to spend £50 to £70 on a game,
right?
Versus like a £5 movie ticket.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very, very different thing, and it's not a big time commitment as well. I think that's the other thing people forget. It's just like, this is potentially 100 hours I've got to put in really to fully understand and appreciate this thing, versus like a 2-hour movie, maybe a 3-hour movie at the most that I'm gonna go watch.
I think the fact too that like, video games are the medium where it's probably like the least easy to sample things too, right? Because like, you have your game passes and like your EA, you know, or not EA
Play.
Yeah, EA Play. And yeah, you know what I mean. All the Ubisoft has theirs and all that.
Stadia, Ubisoft Plus.
Sure. So like, there are things like that exist, but they're new, right? Like, that's not ubiquitous.
Yeah.
It's not
same
the
as
way...
like the Nintendo Switch game trials. You know, that's a fairly new thing, and
right.
And they actually work really well. Like, listen to last week's Nintendo Noise if you want to hear some thoughts on it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a strange one. Like, I feel like even previously it was more common. Like, I used to get a PlayStation demo disc all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we would constantly get them attached to a magazine. But now that magazines have gone away, so have demos, which makes no sense because you should just be able to download it or stream it or play it. I don't necessarily just need to see someone play it on Twitch or watch a YouTube video about it. Sometimes you want to sense it and feel it for yourself, and demos just don't really exist all that much anymore. It was a real surprise when we got like a Kirby demo because I didn't think we would.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a lower barrier of entry to most, maybe not most forms of entertainment, but like the more popular forms of entertainment, right? When you think that like video games are one of the most dominant and popular forms of entertainment, right? But like, they're niche compared to like movies, right? Like, everybody watches movies.
Yeah, and TV, I would think, is probably even more than movies at this
Right.
point.
And like my friend Andy, who I went and visited in DC, you can hear about us talk about it on One More Thing, um, was saying to me that like Elden Ring, for example, right? Like sold, like what, it was like 12 million copies or something like that. A really impressive number in its first couple weeks. And he was like, yeah, but like if a movie sold that many tickets, that would be a huge failure. Right? So it's like,
Yeah, it would, but a movie is like that's not a $60 game, like a movie
no,
ticket
but
isn't $60.
the
But yeah.
point is though that like there's a lot more people that watch movies than play video games, even though video games are very popular. And I think when you look at like other more niche forms of entertainment, right, like books or comics or like something else that is like less popular, there's a similarly more difficult barrier of entry where it's like really the only way to tell if you like something is to buy it and try it. But those things are a lot cheaper, right? Like a book.
Well, and books, for example, you can go to a library.
Sure.
You don't have to buy that.
Yeah. True.
There is a way to get that for cheaper or for free. And there isn't for video games unless someone's willing to lend you a physical copy. And as we shift to digital, that's just going to be gone.
Yeah, and
You
I
won't
mean,
be
like,
able to.
yeah, and lending a physical copy also is like, it's great for the consumer, but it's like not the best thing for the health of the industry. That like where most games, really rely on sold copies, still, and that's increasingly not a super common model. I mean, like it is, but it isn't, right? Like the fact that there isn't, a more ubiquitous way for you to just like test things, is kind of interesting, right? Because there are so many attractive games that come out a year now. You have to budget, like unless you have a ton of expendable income or games are like the only thing that you spend your money on, you can't really play everything. Not only just from like a time investment as well, right? Like so even if you have the money, right? If you have a job, like you can't play every video game that comes out in a year. You could watch every critically acclaimed movie that comes out in a year. Totally, that's totally.
Oh yeah,
doable.
if you wanted to watch every Oscar-nominated movie, you could if that's what we're basing it on, you could probably watch those in a week, if that. If you're going back to back, you could probably do that over like 3-4 days.
But I think like that, like having to like budget time and things like that is that's a unique thing.
That's what's crazy. Yeah, that is a very unique thing. Like, and trying to, I guess, steal time from different places, right? Making sure you slot that in. Like I was working till 1 a.m. last night, and I was just like, you know what? I haven't played a game today, and I was just like, I really, really wanted to do this one specific thing in Elden Ring, and I was just like, I'm gonna go see if I can do it, and that just ate away at me. I ended up going to bed at like 3 a.m. because I was just like, I can't not do this. I can't not finish this. I need to do it.
That's a gamer ass thing too, I think, is like
I think
staying up really fucking late to play a video game just because and being like, I know this is gonna fuck me tomorrow, but like whatever.
Yeah, but then you've got like the story, right? And if you're there doing it with friends as well, it's such a social
We were up until 5 a.m. Yeah. No, I totally know what you mean. Like that's the thing I miss the most about being a part-time employee is like I used to love doing that. Like when I was working part-time and I was a freelancer and I was playing a lot of PC games at the time and I would like, finish up with like an article or like, throw out my YouTube video, finish my shifts, get done with my stuff, and then jump on, see who's on Discord. What are we playing, boys? All right, cool. Drop in and oh yeah, let's play until fucking 6 a.m. and I'll call out of my 4-hour shift at work tomorrow. Like, that's the lifestyle, man. That's to be young
sure
and
I can do it anymore
and barely employed.
So another one I had was grinding. I just don't know anyone, any other, I guess, form of media or anyone else.
No, TV's like
put
that.
Up with it.
TV and reading.
No, I don't think so.
Oh no! It's the second season is where it really gets good. You just have to watch the first 2 seasons and then it's good.
I just skip through them. I don't have to do it, right? There's some games where I literally have to just go around farming for like, Elden Ring bones or
Yeah.
runes so I can level up so I can go do a specific thing.
No, I don't
And
know.
it happens so often that people do it. People
You're
they
right, but
will.
I don't know. I think that's the same thing. It's more prevalent in games for sure, but I think I definitely, because it's like, oh, I didn't like the first season. You got to get till season 3, man. That's when it's really good. Like people definitely do that shit. Oh, it really picks
That's
up.
more like a game getting good at a specific point, though. Like,
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
this is
true.
something where you're like blocked from going to a specific area, and it doesn't happen as much in modern games. But like, think back to like Final Fantasy VII or whatever, like an old RPG. Like you even had it in Persona 5, right? You had to go and do some of the stuff in Mementos in order to level up your social stuff, so
Yeah.
you could then go back and do them. And like that's all stuff that you might not necessarily want to do. You just want to carry on and play the game, but there's no way to do it unless you crack on through that and make sure you've like leveled up and you're all ready and you're good to go. It's almost like work at that point, and I will just put a podcast on and I'll just be playing it, or if it's on Switch, I'll just play it on handheld and I'll have something on in the TV. It's very much like a secondary thing, like a mind numbing. Oh, I'm just gonna grind through this and do this.
That's a weird thing too. I guess like trash TV is kind of an equivalent of that, but the fact that people will be like, "Oh, it's a great podcast game. This is a game I play when I'm only half paying attention to it."
I listen to podcasts when I'm playing Elden Ring. I consider it a phenomenal game, but sometimes when I'm just exploring, I did it with Breath of the Wild as well. When
It's
I'm
just funny because
on my
like
horse or whatever.
you wouldn't really do that with other things though, right? You're not like, "Oh, yeah.
No, I wouldn't. No.
This is the kind of movie. This is the
You
kind of
might
movie
do
I
it with,
watch
like,
when I'm doing the laundry." Like,
I think it depends though on what you're doing, right? Because you might have like a podcast or music on when you're playing a puzzle, like a physical puzzle,
Sure,
or a board game,
that's true.
or something like that. But you wouldn't, if it's like a movie, you wouldn't really like have something else on going on because you'd be like really confused. But the video games, it depends on the game. Like if it's a story-centric game, then I'm absolutely not doing that. But if it's something like Elden Ring, where I'm not really in it for the story, I'm there for the gameplay and the action and stuff like that, or Stardew Valley, where it's just a therapeutic, I'm just here to do the farming and do my chores, and it's like a therapeutic gaming session that I'm going through to relax and wind down with, then I absolutely could listen to a podcast or watch TV in the background.
Yeah.
But then I'm not really watching the TV anyway, because it's like, Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah,
and
it's just
trash.
there.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. It's just funny because that's a weird thing too, I feel like.
Yeah, like we have a specific thing that we call TV games because of you.
Yeah.
It's a game that you play while you're watching TV and it's something else to do. It's like a secondary activity that you're doing.
Did I coin that phrase?
Yeah.
Cool. Look at me. Real trendsetter over here. So a listener wrote in here, Mango wrote in response to Asobi's question and had one that I thought was a good one. The indecisiveness that comes from deciding which game to play next, because video games are a form of entertainment that has a combination of needing a comparatively larger amount of time investment and a more expensive hobby than most other hobbies in the mainstream, right? So we definitely talked about that bit, but then there's this, which I thought was interesting as well. There's also the double-edged sword of there being so many good games being released every year that it's hard to keep up with a lot of them. There's also the cursed word among gamers, which is the backlog. And, that's a thing that every fucking gamer I've ever met is like, yeah, I have, 5 games I've bought that I've never fucking played. And book people do this. Book people have backlogs. That's, a thing if you're a reader. You buy lots of books. You don't read all those books. You're like, I'm going to get to this eventually. I have 10 books I can read at any time. So they're kindred spirits with this one.
I know movie people like it, too, because I've got a friend who was like, oh, before I die, I want to watch every Oscar winner movie. And he's just slowly working through all of them.
Sure.
And he considers that his backlog of I need to watch all of these. I want to make sure I watch every Oscar every Oscar winning movie.
All right. I guess I shouldn't say that people do, but I don't feel like that's as ubiquitous. And that even feels like a different thing. Right? Being like, I'm going to watch.
It's not, I bought this game and I'm going to play it, because I do it all the time, right?
Yeah,
and it usually happens when they're like, oh, there's a sale on. Okay, let me have a look and see. Oh, I meant to play that game, and now it's only £5. So I'm gonna go ahead and buy that one. And it's just like, okay, when am I actually gonna play this though? Because right now I'm playing a 100-hour game, and I'm only 50 hours into it, and I'm in the middle of also another 40-hour game. I know I didn't finish that game last week that I was playing, and next month there's this game out, and in 3 months' time, there'll probably be another blockbuster game that I'm really excited for and waiting for. And Mango's right; it very much is a time thing. It is like, where do I spend my time and what am I enjoying the most? And that's why I'm like a big proponent, and I never finish video games because I'm just like, I'm fine with that. I can accept that. Sometimes I do really want to finish a video game, but sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I don't have the time to finish this, and the next new fresh thing is there and it looks really cool and I want to play that and I want to experience that. I don't think you necessarily have to finish everything that you start.
I don't think you have to finish everything you start, but I don't like playing that way because like, and a lot of people play that way. I think that's more people play that way than the way I play. But I just don't. I don't know if I'm playing a game and it doesn't grab me. That's one thing. But I hate playing a game that I like and then falling out of it for some reason. Right, like Deathloop is a great example. I really enjoyed Deathloop. I spent like 25 hours with it, but I didn't finish it. And I hate that. I hate that. Like that feels like a black mark, you know, where I'm like, oh, fuck, like I just want to get back to it and finish it at some point. But to your point, I'm already on to this next thing and the next thing. And like, by the time I actually circle back to play it, it might be later this year. It might be early next year. Like that's happened to me with a lot of games, right? Like God of War was like that. I remember God of War came out, I think, I don't know, the week or the second week after I started dating Sarah. And I was like, oh, this game's amazing. And then I was like, yeah, whatever. Who cares about video games? Like, you know, whatever. I'm going to play Overwatch when I have 20 minutes and otherwise video games not interesting to me right now. And that sucked until I got back to it. And then I had the experience I wanted to have with it. And that's a thing I don't love about games. That is a unique problem, is that like you kind of need to play a game like in a sitting.
In one go.
Yeah.
It
And
depends
like
what type of game it is, though, because some games are the kind of game that you can pepper in and out of, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time, I'm with you. It's just, and I think part of it comes down to control schemes, and
because you
going
lose
back
your
into it
chops.
and you're like, where the fuck am I? What am I doing? I don't know how this game functions anymore. And I had that exact experience when I went back to Horizon at the weekend. I was just like, I don't know what I was doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't remember how these controls work.
You gotta finish it so we can do the spoiler cast. You
haven't even finished it yet. Like if you'd have
I'm
finished
still playing it though.
I'd be like motivated, and I'm continuing to play it. I don't know. It's so tough when time's limited, and like especially with me, like at the moment, everyone's just like, "Oh, come on! I want to see you play this bit in Elden Ring, and come back and now do this in Elden Ring." And like Asobi was like making up a whole new fresh sword for me and stuff, and like wanted to give that to me. So it's just like, what do I do? Like,
just play Elden Ring on stream. You're streaming it like 5 hours a week. Fucking A, man. I get it.
It's not enough because it's like a 160-hour game, and that's a massive issue. It's very unusual for me to get into a game that is that long anymore, because I'm just like, how long is it? Yeah, there's no way I can play that. 20 to 30 hours is the sweet spot for me, and I'm just like, I want to get in and out, have this nice compact experience that I can kind of wrap up with.
I hate that it's so hard to do that. Because, like, I like to play games of varying lengths, right? Like, I love a game that is, like, if I really, really love a game and I feel like I can't get enough of it, then I want it to be long. And I want it to, you know, like a game like Persona 5, for example, right? Like, that was a perfect, everlasting gobstopper of a game, right? Of just, there was and by the time I got to the end, I was like, I could have played more, but I also felt satisfied.
Were you playing that alongside other games, though? Because that's the kind of game where you don't have to worry about the controls.
Yeah.
Because it is just turn-based, and it is just like, oh, I press X to pick this option.
If you'll recall, It was my main game at 2 different points in a year. There,
I
like
thought so, because you played Final Fantasy in between, right?
and then Ghost as well. I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
I definitely remember Final Fantasy because it was like, oh, I finished 2 massive JRPGs this year.
Yeah. Well, I know I played because like Final Fantasy, Last of Us, and Ghost. I think all maybe came in between my 2 sessions of Persona 5, but that was an easy one to jump in and jump out. Especially because I ended it at a good spot. Like I finished a palace and then was like, cool, I'm going to stop for now. And I came back and was just like, yeah, right, I remember what happened. I just wrapped up this other thing. Great. It was like a perfect like season break, or it was like, okay. And I like pulled up a like story synopsis real quick and was like, yeah, I remember what was happening. We're good. I know what was going on. And I remember I jumped into the game and I was like, oh yeah, let's go. Fucking A. And it was just good to be back. Let's roll.
Yeah, I mean, that is another really tough thing, though, that you, like, it really does happen going from game to game and just forgetting where you are. Like, you'll always have, when you go from season to season of a TV show previously on such and such.
Yeah.
And you'll have, like, a good recap. And thankfully, like, there are sometimes recaps online between games, right? If you wanted to know what really, really happened in Horizon Zero Dawn before you played Forgotten West, great supercuts online. Will wrap up the whole story. And usually when it's a sequel game, you'll get like a bit of a prequel recap, a little video. But when I've gone back to it after 6 months of playing something else, and I'm in a really like high-powered area, I need to know exactly what each button does at any given time because I've got to use the skills that I've learned and picked up over the game, and I just can't. It really is a struggle.
You know what's interesting too is how certain games, like, you never forget how to play, right?
Yeah.
Like multiplayer games. Like I feel like I always remember I haven't played Halo in months now, right? But if I picked up Halo, I know exactly what all the buttons do, and I wouldn't even have to think about it.
To some extent, yeah. But like if I went back to Fortnite, I wouldn't remember how the building works. And I think that's because Halo's controls are very similar to other games, especially now. Like in Infinite, they changed the controls a fair amount. I remember when I was playing Master Chief Collection, I was pressing left trigger to try and like use the scope and stuff, and it was like throwing all my grenades, and I'm like, what the fuck's happening? Like, in any first person shooter, this is like you look down the scope button, but nope, not in Halo. That's the throw grenades button.
Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting because, like, I guess it depends on how long you play the game.
I think that's probably part of it, right? It's like you never forget how to learn a bike. It's just like, yeah, because you never forget how to ride a bike because you rode that bike for hundreds of hours when you were a kid. So of course you're never going to forget when you go back to it because it's muscle memory. You know exactly what to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. I think
it's a skill like anything else. It's something you've acquired, right? Like I bet, people that knit, for example, they could knit with their eyes closed because they know exactly what it is. It's just a repetitive action.
That's how I feel about playing drums, right? Where it's like I don't think about it, right? Like I just do it.
Which if you know the controls and you know exactly what they do and when to press it at any given time, you're not thinking about doing it. You're just doing it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's funny. I think the last one I wanted to call out, and then we'll wrap it up for the day, is like how it's experientially very different to go back to a video game than it is anything else, right? Like it's funny how much like gamers are very into nostalgia, right? But so many games, like we were just talking about it on Nintendo Noise this week, right? Like the Game Boy Advance's 21st birthday. So we did a ranking of our favorite Game Boy Advance games, and you should go check it out. And the number 2 game, I won't say what it is, but the number 2 game on my list is a game I think I have only played twice, right? And I'm like, oh, so it's one of my favorite games, right?
Because it's a long game.
Sure.
So you can't really play it for much longer than that. But
it's
some
like,
games I'll go back to over and over again.
Yeah, like Pac-Man or fucking League of Legends or something.
Not
where you
even
just
like that. Like every now and again, I'll just be like, oh, I really want to play really want to play Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion again.
Sure.
Love that game. Want to crack that open. How many times have you gone back to Ocarina of Time?
Or Pokemon.
You gone or Mario 64 or all manner of games. But it's just
Sure.
like, I really want to play that again. Toy Story 2 for me is one of them.
Yeah, I
Every couple of
rebeat
years.
I rebeat Sonic 2 when it came to
Yeah.
the Switch, just because I was like, yeah, let me just beat this in a night for fun,
Mhm.
you know?
And
Yeah.
you know it like the back of your hand.
But
It's almost like when you go back to those bigger kind of RPG games, it's like going back to an old town that you're familiar with.
yes,
And you're just
which
like,
is
oh,
weird.
yeah, there's such and such there, and there's the dude that sells this.
Which is weird because it's like not. I don't feel like it's the same as like. I think some of the other games that you just brought up, right, where you're like going back to like a platformer or something like that. I don't know. That feels more like rewatching a TV show or like rereading something or being like, oh, this is an old familiar favorite and I'm going to go back to this because it's comfort food or whatever. But there are a lot of games where I feel like you can't really do that. Like, there are plenty of games that a great example, Breath of the Wild. I've wanted to replay it since it came out, but I never have. And it's interesting because, like, I want to replay the game, and I know that if I replay it, I'll have fun with it. But I also know that I can never have the same experience of playing it for the first time again. And that's true of like movies and books, but it's interesting where like I think of like, you know, some of my favorite books of all time, right? And like a book that I read when I was like a teenager, and then I come back to it when I'm in college, and then I come back to it when I'm, you know, in my late 20s, and like how the work grows with you, right? And you get different things out of it the more you read it, or you know, notice things you didn't notice before and things like that. And, you know, like, I think that can happen with games too. But, like, I think of, like, the way that I felt when I played, like, the Stanley Parable or Undertale, and, like, it sent a shiver up my spine, you know? And, like, I'll never feel that again, even if I replay the game and love it, right? Because I know what it is now, and I've had the experience, and I loved the experience, but it'll you know what I mean? Like it feels a little different with video games. I feel like it's harder to recapture.
I think it's because you connect so much more with it because you're directly controlling it.
Yeah.
You're not out of the experience looking at someone else moving the camera and controlling it. It's like I move this stick and I'm directly modifying what's happening at that point. And especially with like a role play game, you can become that person. You put yourself in that situation. It's like, oh, I am me. I'm making these decisions. I'm doing it as if this was me making these choices. Why you love Mass Effect so much, right?
Yeah.
You connect with it. You play it in that specific way. You have affinities to specific people. You have reactions to other people because you're just like, I don't like what you're doing there. You know, I think constantly about the beef that you have with other people in the FlipScreen community about how much you hate specific houses in Fire Emblem because you just disagree 100% with them because you're so aligned with someone else.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Well, and something I don't know if this is this way for you, but I have this with games where like I very much associate them with like times and places too.
I do, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I want to go back and play this game again. And part of that is wanting to play the game again and experience it again. But also part of it is like thinking about how I felt about something in the context of a different time, right? Of like, I remember playing like Arkham Asylum for the first time and being like,
feel like
holy
music,
shit.
though.
Like, yeah, totally. But I feel like music is different too, because I feel like music grows with me in the same way where like, I don't go back and listen to old music and feel like, oh, this feels like old music, right? Whereas like, and like it can feel that way, but like games also age mechanically in a way that like other art doesn't as much. Like,
yeah, have you ever go back and it's like, oh, I don't remember it being this clunky when I was a kid.
Sure. Yeah, right.
Because like we've had that reaction. I can't play Mario 64 anymore, for example, because that camera's just horrendous. But I have such fond memories of that, and I spoke about it on the Mario episode of Nintendo Noise. There was episode 27, where it really like a huge part of it was when I went to hospital. So I was in and out of hospital when I was a kid, and it's just like I remember going and sitting and playing at that like machine, and it was just a thing I did. I don't think I would have got those memories if it was just like, oh, I don't know, fucking Aladdin was on in the corner while I was at the hospital, it wouldn't have been the same. It's just like, oh, there's a movie on, and I don't really care about that. It was a different kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like you said, it's an experience. It's like a journey you go on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there is that like desire to like reconnect with it. But it's interesting because I feel like it's a lot like looking back on memories and being like, oh, like how cool would it be to go back and relive, or not even like to relive it, like, but like to experience the way it felt to feel some way when you were younger, right? When you had this, like the first time you ever, how cool would it be to be able to feel what it felt like to go back and go to the first concert you ever went to, right? Or like,
Mm-hmm.
to I don't know, right? Like, I don't know, right? Like anything, right? Like, oh, like imagine if you could go back to like the first date you ever had with Macaulay, right? And like just re-experience those emotions in the context of how you feel now. But that's impossible, right? Like that's obviously impossible for a myriad of reasons. But it's interesting that I think games feel similar because you have this like, I did this. This is a thing I went and did, and I want to recapture some of that, right? And like, it's never quite the same, which is interesting. Because I feel like there are times like I'll listen to an old song or watch an old movie and feel transported back to a time and place. But it's not always as easy to tap into that with games, I think that's why we're so obsessed with remakes, right? Because you're like, the whole point of a good remake is to make you feel like you felt the first time without the friction, right? Without the, oh, it's janky.
Make it better, yeah, remaster it.
Oh, it doesn't have an autosave. Oh, like, that kind of shit. Because that was what Mass Effect did for me, right? It was like, oh, it feels like I'm playing these for the first time again and not having to deal with the bullshit that, I don't want to deal with.
Yeah, it was still like seeing old friends. It was like, oh, I'm back here. I know exactly who you are, and I know. And you probably played it the same way again.
I sure did.
Even though you could have played it differently, you probably played it the exact same way. And I can imagine you would do the same with the Life is Strange collection. You'll just go back and you'll do the exact same, make exact same choices because it's just who you are as a person.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I remember, I believe it was Olaf who made this point where I asked the community what I should do. Like, should I just replay Mass Effect and make all the same decisions, or should I play like FemShep and like make different choices? And I remember Olaf being like, well, if you want to play the game and make all the same choices you made for nostalgia's sake, you should do that, because if then when you want to play Mass Effect again, you could come back and play it as FemShep and make different choices, and it'll feel fresh again, but you'll only ever get the nostalgia trip run once, right? So like, do one and then the other, not both in one go. And I was like, that's a good point. That's a great point, actually.
Yeah, hey, he's a smart guy.
Definitely. So now that one's in my back pocket. When I need a little hit of serotonin, it'll be like, all right, time to boot up Mass Effect again.
I got one last thing I want to say, and I'm sure you'll agree with me before we close out, which is I have never experienced anything like the sense of community that gamers give, where we all band behind something that we love so much that we've built applications like Discord, and we have groups specifically for it. And we watch presentations together, and we all get excited, and we have Reddit.
There's an entire industry around watching people play video games. Yeah.
Twitch exists just for that. The sense of community we get, it's just, and the fact that we have built a little community with everyone, it's just so humbling. I absolutely love it. It's amazing. We can just post something on Twitter, for example. Anyone in the world, and we'll get a response, and there'll be someone who's interested in talking about it. Or you can post something on Reddit, or you can get into a comments, or go on the forum like Reset Era or something, and it's just like, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. I've never known any other industry produce communities like the games industry does.
I'd say I've experienced some other ones for sure. I think a lot of like fandom in general is like that, but yeah. But I do think gamers in mass are more like that than other cliques. because of all the things that we just said, right? Like other industries do those same things, but like it's so ubiquitous with gaming, right? Is community and the sharing of the experience. There's share buttons on the fucking controller, like
because
like
even though it's an absolutely massive industry, it still feels niche to people. And I guess specific games feel even more niche. Like I was streaming Monster Hunter for the first time, and we had new people come in and wanted to basically recruit me as someone who's like, oh, it was my first time playing Monster Hunter. I put it in the stream title. It was like first playthrough tag on there. And people come in and help me. It's like, oh, go do this cool thing, and now let me play with you and like do this. And everyone's just like really excited to see someone enjoying something that they love, and it's really nice to see. And the community isn't always great. The console wars, the fanboys and stuff, but for the most part, I think it's a net positive. Like we couldn't do what we did if it wasn't for people that love video games as much as they do, that they want to be part of a community and they want to watch videos and they want to listen to podcasts and watch streams and stuff, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that there's so many people that love games so much that just playing games isn't enough it speaks volumes. I certainly don't feel that way about anything else, not to this degree anyway. Like I love sharing any kind of art that I enjoy with other people. It's fun to talk about things and everything, but like, yeah, I'm so obsessed with getting to talk to people about games and talking about my favorite games and learning about theirs, and it's just
everyone's is always so different. Like the fact there's so many different genres, no one's ever got the same favorite game. Like, and if you do find someone who's got the same favorite game, they've probably got other different games that they like, and it's probably a totally different list to yours.
And I think it's also exciting that it's such a young medium, like movies, comics, TV, like all these things have been around for so long, by comparison, that, they've had a lot longer to figure out what they are, right? Like we just had 100 years of Hollywood, and video games are like not even close to that yet.
Well, and look how much Hollywood's changed over the times. The first movies didn't even have any sound. It was just
look how far we've come.
Someone was playing. Yeah, I mean, we come from like literal squares on a screen with Pong. It's like a white square being pushed from another white square to another white square, and now you've got stuff that looks hyper realistic and is fully 3D immersive. It's movie level quality, but you're controlling it.
That's always been the thing that's been most exciting to me, and I think coming up when we did, you got to see a lot of growth really quickly, and I think that's always been something that's fascinated me about games, is like that they're always changing. And you look at what the game of the year was 20 years ago, and it was in some cases there are some forms that like persevere, right? And like you might still see a retro style game that gets that kind of attention, and like that's awesome to see. But then there's also like so many new kinds of genres of games that like didn't even, like, there was no market for when we were growing up, right? Like there were no games like something like the Stanley Parable, like there wasn't an avenue for them, so yeah, I think that's something that's really exciting, and it's why I love being a part of this industry, and following it. It's a really vibrant, creative space, and I think we really only scratched the surface of what games can be. So that's such an exciting thing to think about. Where games will be, 30, 40 years from now, something like that, right? When we're getting closer to that 100-year mark, it's kind of unfathomable. So we'll leave you with that one for today. Thank you for joining us here on another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. If you want to show your support, if you want to get in touch, if you want to become a part of the FlipScreen Games community, you can do all of those things by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to our Patreon, our Discord. You can write in the show and maybe even create a whole main topic like Asobi did. A bunch of ways that you can get involved and become a part of the community, however you choose to do so. We appreciate you being here and being a part of the conversation. So, thank you. I've been Pete. He's been Steve for FlipScreen Games. We'll see you next week.